Hey, welcome back everyone to another episode of Let Me Interrupt. Today we have a really exciting discussion. Really glad you joined us this week again. I'm going to hand it off to Melissa, my co-host, as you may know if you're a returning listener. Melissa, take it away with our guest intro.
Sure. Welcome back, everyone. Today, we have somebody really exciting on the podcast. She is someone I have gotten to know closely over the last year, although very much in a professional setting. We are welcoming Dr. Karen Reyff, a veterinarian, onto the podcast today. Early on in her academic experience, she graduated in 1998 from Eastern Illinois, actually with a management focus in information systems. She then relocated to Texas with her family and just realized that she wasn't really feeling like she was super passionate about what she was doing working with software and technology. So she kind of started exploring her options, met up with her personal vet and said, "Hey, can I shadow you?" And he graciously obliged, and it sparked Dr. Reyff's passion in veterinarian medicine. She then went back to college, knocked out some of her prerequisites, then entered vet school and graduated in 2014 from Texas A&M. Is that right, Dr. Reyff?
Yep.
Texas A&M. So Dr. Reyff, we're super delighted to have you on. As I expressed, you are my personal vet, but nonetheless, we are delighted to have a professional veterinarian on the podcast. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Welcome. Cindy?
Yeah, no, we're super glad to have you. And I think although Melissa gave such a good introduction, I would love to hear from you. Introduce yourself to our listeners and just kind of tell us a little bit about what was that passion that drove you to seeking a career in the veterinary industry. Is that right?
Veterinary medicine. Yeah.
Veterinary medicine.
So I don't have the most romantic story. There's no way that I ever would have thought as a little kid I was going to be a vet. Like a lot of people will say, oh my gosh, I knew when I was 2 years old, I wanted to be a vet. And that never crossed my mind. Growing up, I was super into art and I always thought I was going to be a painter, some kind of artist. And when I went to college, I was an art major and I realized that I thought I was decent, but I wasn't going to be like the next big thing. And so I didn't want to live I didn't want to be super poor, starving artist. And so I started checking out other interests and I just thought what don't I know anything about? And I ended up in computers. And that's how I ended up graduating with that initial degree, and software was fun. It was creative and everything, but I don't know. I could tell going in, it wasn't going to be my passion. And so after I graduated college, that's when I really became much more interested in science and medicine. And of course, I loved animals, like everybody that's a vet loves animals. But when I was trying to figure out what I could do that would be a better fit for me, I just made a list. I made a list of my likes and my dislikes. I made a list of things that I liked about working environment and things I didn't like. And science, animals, and medicine were at the top of the list. And so I just was like, okay, what fits that? And I kind of thought about going the human medicine route, but that didn't kick my interest up as much as animal medicine. When I met with my vet, I was like, oh my gosh, as soon as I started hanging out with him, I just knew that was going to be awesome, that's what I wanted to do. And I think the thing I enjoy so much is, and there's a lot of similarities to writing software, is that it's problem solving. And of course, there's a lot of adorable puppies and kittens and, you get to play and pet them and all that when they come in. But just really understanding being it, because, computers can't talk to you, right? And so when you're trying to write software or you're debugging something, you're trying to figure out what's going on through the symptoms you can observe and whatnot. And there's a lot of similarity to working with animals because they can't tell you what's going on either. So I love the problem solving aspect of it. And it's super satisfying to fix animals. And it's super satisfying to see them as they grow and just be a part of somebody's family.
What a nice journey indeed. So what does it take to become a veterinarian today?
Well, it's a lot of science as a prerequisite. reason I had to go back to school for a couple of years before I even applied was that even though my undergraduate was in computers, since it was the business school, I didn't have like all the general chemistries and biochemistry, biology, microbiology, genetics, physics. There's some animal science classes you have to do. And so that's a big part of it, is having a proficiency in science. You want to get a lot of varied animal experience if you can. So I didn't realize before hanging out with my vet that actually is required. You have to have a certain number of hours of experience in a veterinary setting, like a medical setting. And then you also have to have experience that's more in like just an animal care setting. So having your own pets, that kind of thing can count for that. They want to know that you understand that this is a medical profession and that it's not necessarily an easy medical profession. Some people have pet insurance, but a lot of people don't. And so that's going to impact what kind of treatment you can offer. And you have to be able to work with people to do the best you can for the situation with the finances that they have. And they would love, nowadays, I think they would love for people that have an interest in large animal, because there's a kind of a shortage of vets in the cattle and horses and pigs and all of those, the food animals, if you will, side of things, for a variety of reasons. So if you have an interest in that, that's definitely going to give you a leg up. But it's having the basics with cover all the classes you need, try to get the best grades you can, have a lot of activities to show, you've got experience with this kind of thing. And then make them understand that, you really get what it's all about to become a veterinarian.
I love that journey. I mean, I know we talked about it a little bit early, but there's so much that goes into being a veterinarian that I think it's not top of mind sometimes. I mean, I didn't realize that you had to have that independent, experience and have on the field, like much like you would expect a doctor for people to have. And it warmed my heart to know that, because like we all love our pets, right? Like they're family to us. And so when you really think about it logically, that makes sense. And that's great. But it also is a lot of work, a lot of commitment, a lot of effort to go into, and especially switching from, you were in one career over to the other. I mean, I just love that drive was there for you, and that you kind of carried it all the way through to the end. And so I think, that gives us so much hope if you're ever like stuck in a place, that there is opportunity to move somewhere else. There is opportunity to kind of follow your passions or what inspires you for the next step. So I love that about your story.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, I was 38 when I graduated from vet school. So, I mean, you can, if you've got, you have to have like a good support structure. And for me, it actually was an advantage that I was an adult that had worked and saved money before I went to school, because I didn't have to take out the enormous student loans that people, talk about. That's in a lot of discussions right now. I just was able to pay my way through it and use my savings and whatnot. But I'm so glad that I switched careers, and I love my job and I love what I do, and it's awesome.
And I'll tell you, I love my vet. So, there's that. That's on the record. And second thing, you don't look like you are. I mean, I know you graduated several years ago, but you look really great you don't have to disclose how old you are, but if you graduated at 38, then I mean, I'm really impressed. You've got like a great skin regimen or something going on.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I'm 46. I'm good with telling people that. I think it's having a good dermatologist that has had me do some good stuff. And it's funny, like Martha Stewart once said, it's like sleep well and eat well and a sprinkle of Botox. And that's pretty much the case. So
do you feel like you definitely specialize in companion animals versus livestock?
Mm-hmm. I typically see dogs and cats. We'll see the occasional, we call them pocket pets or companion animal exotics. So like a guinea pig or hamster or something like that. when I was in school, I was interested in everything. I grew up in a suburb of Chicago. I didn't have a lot of experience with horses or cattle or any of those. And so I wanted to get my hands into everything, I had so much fun doing. And then I also was active in a club that focused on the quote unquote exotic animals. So like snakes and birds and that sort of thing. And I did a couple of externships at clinics my fourth year of vet school at places around DFW that only see really exotic animals. Every vet graduates with knowing about the basics. So dogs, cats, cattle, horses, sheep and goats, and a little bit of birds mainly with the thought about chickens. So at this point, what I see is dictated an awful lot. Oh, here's Hamilton. Hi, Hammy. He's a good kitten. Yeah. At this point, what I see is dictated a lot by the equipment and the medicines that we have. And then also, you have to think about what the staff is comfortable with. I haven't fortunately been beat up by very many animals since I've been a vet, but the things that have bitten me the most and the most effectively have been birds. And that hurts. And so you really have to know what you're doing when you ask someone to hold a bird for you for an exam. So most people, they'll call first because they know that exotics aren't, just always seen.
So right now that you mentioned, small pocket pets, I remember just my little brother had a hamster, and the hamster was feeling sick. And I remember my dad being like, come on, you're going to make me take the hamster to the vet. Are you serious? And I was like, Dad, my brother was 6, and so we went, and his hamster got diagnosed with cancer. And I remember just sitting there, with my brother, and it was just such an emotional moment for him, not understanding whatever that was. But the vet there was just so thoughtful and treated really our hamster like it was, a family member. So I just wanted to throw that out there because I just love that. And I can see kind of in hearing you and how you talk about the efficiency of kind of treatment and who you're working with and being thoughtful about the skill set that people have, as far as making sure that you're addressing issues well. I think I get that vibe from you as well. And it just made me relive that moment of it was just a touching moment.
I appreciate it. Yeah. I mean, and that's an aspect as well of all those little pets like that too, is that a lot of people go into getting those sorts of pets or any pet, and they have all the good intentions, but they don't really think, for some reason, it doesn't resonate in people's minds that animals all have some kind of potential health problem, or health care needed. And so there are people who just won't even bring those kinds of animals to the vet because they paid $15 to get their little hamster. And then they're like, wait, you want us to pay how much to do XYZ? But if you do go and you want to, that you want to find out what's going on, I mean, there are options for treatment and care. We do learn about those things too. So it's just interesting how, I don't know, at one point I was a student at a clinic, and the vet introduced me. He said, I'm Dr. So-and-so, and this is Karen. She's a vet student from Texas A&M. And the owner looked at me and said, you have to go to school for this? And it's I mean, when you step back and think about it, yeah, of course you do, right? But it just for some reason doesn't enter the popular consciousness that there is a lot of stuff involved in it. So, but anyway, looping back around, I'm glad that you had a good experience with the vet with your hamster. And yeah, everybody I know in this industry just truly loves animals and kind of delights when they get to see anything even that they don't see regularly.
During COVID, it's no surprise that a lot of people found a friend, got a dog, a cat, a hamster, a bird. I mean, anything and everything. We saw, I think it was that article for that ostrich in the airport, right? And I can imagine that type of treatment and, all of the extra effort that goes into being warm with people as you're treating their pets. Do you feel like during, the stress of one, did you see an influx coming in, at least where you're practicing? And how did that hurt or create any barriers for essentially, the way that you treated pre-COVID versus with the influx post-COVID?
Yes. So yes, we definitely saw a lot of pets that had been adopted. So we used to try to do everything, all of our exam and the vaccines and all the, whatever was practical to do, we would try to do in the room with the owner present so they could see what we were doing and feel comfortable and all of that. So in the very beginning of COVID, we had to go to curbside where the technician would run out and get a history and bring the animal in, and the person wasn't allowed to come in, and we would do everything. And then we would call the owner, and, it was all trying to keep as much distance as possible while still taking care of the pets. And I think the clientele where I work, people rolled with that pretty well. They understood, and everybody was like, what the heck's going on? Nobody really knew. We were just trying to make our way through a very bizarre time. And then when we kind of got a handle on the situation, we started letting people in, and they'd have to wear masks. And then the technician would take the owner and the pet into a room. They would go get a history, then they'd bring the pet back to us. We'd examine, and then we'd go in and talk with the owners. And now we kind of just have continued to do that for the most part, minus the masks. We do ask, remind the technicians to say, okay, we're gonna take Fluffy back if that's okay with you, because some people really don't, they're not comfortable with that. They want the pet to be there with them. So, and that's fine. We totally honor that. But I think the reason we've sort of stuck with doing things primarily out of the room is because what we've discovered through all of that is that I would say a good 99% of dogs and cats actually are much calmer and do much better during everything when they aren't with the owner. I think there's some degree of them being protective of that person. And then I also think that they very much feel everyone's emotions. And so if the person is very anxious, that will sort of bleed into the dog or the cat. And then all of a sudden they're really anxious. And so, it's just a better experience for the pets to kind of continue it with having the pet be brought back to the treatment for area for everything to be done. But we try to be really transparent. I mean,
I was going to ask you for the 411. I would imagine in my mind, when I bring my pets in and they go back with the vet tech and they go happily trotting away, back to the back, and it's only a few minutes, but I imagine you guys are back there rolling around on the floor playing and, a lot of baby talk going on, and I'm sure it's fun. I'm sure it's good.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I said before, everybody that I work with and pretty much everybody I've met is they, even though you're not supposed to say in your vet school interview, right? Like, why do you want to be a vet? Because I love animals, but we we love that. And so, when they come in, it's just like, hi, baby. And you just love all over them and figure out what you need to do to keep them comfortable to get done what you need to get done. But I mean, to some extent, it's still like when you take a kid to the doctor, I mean, it is the doctor, right? They're not necessarily going to love everything that has to be done, but it's for their health.
Well, shifting gears a little bit. So Cindy and I had discovered when we got you to agree to come onto the podcast, we ran across some really kind of disturbing media reports and news reports about the stress and correlation of suicide rates in veterinarians. And Cindy's actually the one who shared it with me. I was stunned. I couldn't even believe it. So related to stress and how you all handle that stress and process, kind of maybe talk about, what your thoughts are surrounding that.
So yes. suicide in the veterinary industry is definitely a problem. And there's a Facebook group called Not One More Vet that was to really raise awareness and provide a community for people in the veterinary industry to be able to have sort of like a safe space to talk through things. And really even the vet schools have started to include mental health discussions and whatnot in their curriculum to one degree or another. I feel very lucky that I work where I work with the clientele that I have, because our area is relatively affluent, and people really tend to view the dogs and cats they bring in as their family members. And not everybody, but there's a decent, maybe 20%, somewhere around that, just guessing, have pet insurance, which alleviates that pressure for them to say we're going to euthanize in a situation where something might be able to be done, but it's going to be really expensive. And my staff is great. We all get along very well. Generally, we have great clients, and we really do our best to be very good with communication and very transparent. And, we try to always be upfront about, like, this is the plan, the recommendation, and this is what it's going to cost. And then if that's not an option, okay, well, then here, maybe we can do this, and just try to work with people. So, I haven't really suffered from that degree of stress or anxiety that other people do. But there's a lot of vets that work in populations where, there aren't enough vets basically to see the patient load. And so they're just constantly slammed with, seeing a ton of cases every day. They don't feel like they really have time to take a good care of any one case per se. Or the people can't afford to do very much. And so, otherwise relatively healthy animals are going to be euthanized when they might not have been able, or they might have been able to be helped. And then there's some areas where people are just not appreciative of the effort that is put in for their pets. And some people have bigger populations of clientele that are just jerks. And so, and then there's bullying with this lovely era of online reviews. It's really easy to have one thing go wrong, and all of a sudden somebody's online trashing you, calling you out by name, saying you're a terrible person, whatever. And then sometimes that escalates and people jump on to that and pile on to the vet. And there can be emotional blackmail too, because it's like, well, if you really loved if you really loved animals, you would do this for free, that kind of thing. So yeah, there's a lot of valid reasons why that the suicide rate is what it is. But I do think that with a lot of things, once you have awareness of it, people don't feel like they're so alone. They can talk about what they've experienced, and, going to therapy is becoming a normalized sort of a thing, whereas in the past, maybe that was sort of frowned upon. And so hopefully, that's helping people through those times of crisis.
Wow. I just wanted to say, oh my gosh, like, there's so many aspects of this that is, and what I've been reading, I kept wondering, like, what is it? Like, but it was almost something like there was a missing piece in what is the insight here. And I think you just gave us some more insight as far as the psychological, I guess almost torment that comes with dealing with not the pets themselves, but the people, the owners, and I can't imagine, it sounds so personal. And even just going on, I think I just saw something on Nextdoor in my local area where it was, yes, you're right. It is not so-and-so veterinary clinic. It is Dr. X did this to my dog. And, if you hurt dogs or you hurt any animal, you're the worst person in the world. I can't even begin to comprehend how to get over that type of hurdle.
Yeah.
Shifting slightly, what's work-life balance look like for you? Do you work typical standard hours? Do you work, well, when I see you in the evening. So I know you don't work traditional banker hours,
Yeah.
which I very much appreciate the weekend and the evening availability that you guys have. But what's your work-life balance look like?
I think mine is fabulous. I work 4 days a week, alternated with essentially 4.5 days a week. I work 9 to 6 during the week, and I'm always off on Thursdays. And then I alternate Saturdays with the other vet that I work with, and that's 9 to 1. And then we're off on Sundays. We're not technically on call because there are emergency vets in our area. If we were a rural general practice, we would probably need to have on call for after emergency care, but after hours emergency care. But so we're not technically on call, but we do have boarders. And so if anything happens with the boarders when the staff is there Saturday evening or Sunday during the day, whatever, occasionally they'll call us and we'll come in and take care of those situations. But yeah, I love my schedule. This is the best schedule. This is the third general practice I've worked for since graduating, and by far the best schedule for work-life balance. And this practice does a very good job of managing client expectations. So to me, there's this sort of weird expectation that a veterinarian is going to respond to you the minute you call us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And clients can get very upset if you don't immediately respond to them. And, it's sort of like, what do you mean they're on vacation? What do you mean they're not there? And so, yeah, I think it's just doing a good job of having the staff say what our hours are and sort of setting that expectation. And I actually have on my email, I don't think very many vets do this, but I just thought this would simplify my life. I have an auto response, like an out of office response on my email, that if somebody emails me, it says, first of all, it gives them info on when I work, my hours. And then it also gives them the info for pet poison control in the area ERs. And so that way, if somebody emails me, it doesn't just go into the void, they know, when I'm going to get back to them. So it's been really good at this practice. That hasn't been the same at past places I've worked, but this place is great.
Oh, that's a great tip. I'm looking at the email now. And you're right. Yeah, and it's so funny because my vet doesn't do that. And so I don't have pet poison control information anywhere. I would have to Google it. It's great. I mean, I did want to get your take, from your experience and the years that you've been practicing. Is there anything unique as a woman in your practice that you have experienced or come across that you could maybe elaborate on and kind of give us some insight on and maybe how you navigated that situation?
So these days, about 70% of every graduating vet class is female. So the industry is totally dominated by women. As far as my support staff goes, almost everybody is a woman. There's a handful of guys that work where I'm at. Really, I don't think people are not used to seeing women as the vet. So I think the only time I can really think of getting any kind of like, hey, wait a minute, in terms of working was my very first job. There was someone who brought in their older dog in distress. My colleague, who was a man, was standing there and he was just watching me work because, the two of us had it covered and it wasn't actively his case and he didn't have something else going on. And when the owner came back, she automatically started asking him all the questions about what was going on. And honestly, I didn't even think about it. I just assumed, if I thought about it at all, I just would have assumed it was because he was the one that wasn't in the middle of trying to help the dog. But afterwards, he said to me, gosh, I'm really sorry that she just immediately started talking to me about it, that she assumed I was the doctor on the case. Now, I don't know if she really did or not, but I thought it was really interesting that that was his mind, that he kind of had that awareness. And I was just like, oh, it's fine, whatever. I mean, my focus was on helping the dog. And after we sorted the dog situation out, I took over talking with her, and I didn't get any weird static or reaction. Like she thought, oh gosh, you're a woman, what are you doing? But the funny thing is that I have had some interactions outside of work that have made me raise an eyebrow. Like I went to a fast food establishment one day to get some food after work, and I was wearing my scrubs, and I had a name tag on that said Dr. Reyff on it. And it's just a teenage guy, So, I mean, I think what it suggests is what people sort of take in without thinking it through. But he looked at me and he said, oh, are you a doctor? And then before I could respond, he said, or I guess a nurse. And I was like thinking to myself, I'm like, it says Dr. Reyff right on my name tag. And you obviously looked at that first. And why would you switch that to, oh, I guess a nurse, other than the fact that I'm a woman? I'm not, I wasn't going to, he's a teenage kid, right? I'm not going to be a jerk about it. I just smiled and said, yeah, I'm a veterinarian. And he was like, oh, cool. And that was the end of that. But there have been some interactions like that where you're sort of like, if a woman's wearing scrubs, it is possible that they are actually the doctor.
Very good point. Very good point. Very good point. Okay. So I'm going to catch you off guard with this, because this was not one of our questions, but everybody's got a favorite. Everybody does. So what's your favorite breed?
Favorite what? Breed?
Favorite breed. Yeah. Your favorite breed.
Oh.
And what's your least favorite, and maybe why?
So I think, well, my favorite dog is my mixed breed dog, Megatron, because he is the bestest boy ever. I don't know if you can hear him, but he's currently deciding whether or not he's going to bark at something random in the house. But if I could pick a purebred dog, I would love to get a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel, because they are just the sweetest little babies, the sweetest disposition. But I probably never will, because they are super duper duper prone to developing heart disease. And I would have a really hard time getting a dog just sort of already knowing almost with certainty what the end of their life is going to look like. And I honestly don't have a breed that I dislike, like my least favorite breed. But I can tell you that the pit bulls everybody loves to hate on are usually the happiest, doofiest babies at the vet. They're great dogs. And then corgis are generally on the difficult side at the vet. I think that they're entertaining dogs, and I follow a Facebook group. The Disapproving Corgis Facebook group is hilarious. But yeah, if you see a corgi walking through the door at the vet, we're all prepared that they're going to be real mad at us for anything we do, because they can be difficult. And Chihuahuas definitely can be difficult. But yeah, those are kind of the main, like there's a lot of vet jokes about Chihuahuas being brats at the vet, but yeah, I know there's not any breed that I would refuse, I would be like, oh gosh, that's a terrible breed.
Okay. So you mentioned that your practice is predominantly women. I'll give a quick shout out to Den, who is a man in your practice, who is awesome. Yes. So Den, if you listen, shout out to you. And I will also shout out a great mentor to both Cindy and I, a tool who has 2 King Charles Cavaliers.
Oh,
and those are the love of his life. Yeah. So Atul will earmark this and tell you what minute to listen at. And we're giving a shout out to Atul's two King Charles Cavaliers. So,
Yeah.
all right.
And
I'll
soon,
follow.
hopefully they won't develop heart disease.
Yeah, no heart
no.
disease.
I'll shout out to my Chihuahua. There's a lot of misconceptions. He does bark a lot. Yeah, no, I get it. I definitely get it. He is very frantic when we go to the vet. But I also want to mention the corgi. So my husband had a dog walking business and pet services business, and I remember he would always come home and he's like, there are these two corgis that he would walk around, and their thing was eating like bags of poop that people wouldn't pick up.
Oh,
The whole bag.
oh, that's so awful.
Ever since then, all those cute corgi like posts and everything ruined.
It's the corgi butt that it gets everybody. It's just that it's that waddle in the back, and you could just eat those butt cheeks up for days. At least I would think that. But
Yep. Yeah. I mean, they're very cute dogs. They have definite opinions about how they want to be treated at the vet.
So let's wrap things up. So first of all, we truly appreciate you joining us today, giving your time on the weekend. I know that everybody wants to get back to their weekend and hug on their animals. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for imparting your knowledge upon us. Just a couple of takeaways. Do you have any gems or pearls that you would share with a new dog owner, or even an experienced dog owner that comes in that's just like words of wisdom? What do you throw at them?
Oh, well, new dog owner, especially if it's a puppy, is easy because it's warning them that they explore their world with their mouth. So, pick up everything you can with a puppy, because they will put it in their mouth. They will try to swallow it, and it may or may not make its way out on its own. I don't know. I think I probably also would I have no affiliation with any pet insurance. I would really recommend that people seriously consider it and whether it makes financial sense for them, because when you're talking about major life things for dogs, big surgeries, big accidents, something catastrophic, right? A lot of surgeries, if you got to have a knee surgery or something like that, at least in our area, cost anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000. If you have to hospitalize your dog for a while, like even a couple of days in an ICU facility around here, I've heard people pay $15,000. So obviously, if you have the wherewithal to not sweat that, great, good for you. But for a lot of people, that's okay, I think we're going to have to say goodbye kind of a conversation. And nobody likes to bring money into the conversation when it comes to their fur baby. But if pet insurance, if you can find one that will cover a decent amount of stuff, and it fits well in your budget, I would seriously consider getting it.
It's a great tip. And the other thing we kind of end our episodes are thinking about where you are now and your career and everything, we went through right before you made the change to decide to jump into veterinary medicine. What would be something that you would have told yourself at that time to maybe make the journey easier?
Well, I think it takes, people tell you this, but maybe I would just reiterate this to myself. It does take a little bit of time when you're a new vet to figure out what your practice style is and how you best communicate with people, and to build your confidence. And really that you don't need to have the answer to what's wrong in 15 minutes. Because I remember when I started practicing, whenever there was a sick animal, I always like, oh gosh, I got to figure this out. And like, it's okay to start some initial diagnostics and talk about like, okay, we need to see what this is, or we need to do this, or talk about a treatment trial or something like that. And it's reasonable. It isn't reasonable to expect someone to diagnose and sort out and fix an animal in 15, 30 minutes all the time. So just to take a little bit of that pressure off. I would also say, I remember there was somebody that asked sort of the same thing, like what advice would you give new grads? And I said, you're not a terrible person if you prescribe a treatment trial of a medication without having done every test that they tell you need to do in school. Because school is very much gold standard ivory tower type of approach, right? Like they're going to teach you the best things to do if you have all the money in the world, and there aren't any factors that are limiting your choices. And so just not feeling like you've failed as a veterinarian. If you decide you're like, I'm pretty darn sure this is what's going on, and rather than charge this person $300 in tests, I'm going to recommend that we just do this like $20 course of medicine. And then if it doesn't work, let's recheck and we'll figure something else out, sort of that kind of reassurance that it's okay to take things a step at a time.
So I'd be remiss not to get this last question in while we have your expertise with our time here. The holidays are upon us. Not everything is always, tinsel and lights, right? People unfortunately have to have hard conversations with their vets. Loss doesn't stop just because it's a holiday. So any advice for someone who, is experiencing the loss of a pet, or the difficult decision to have that conversation with their vet? Like, is it time to say goodbye over the holidays?
Yeah. I mean, loss is hard anytime, but right when it's everybody's talking about Christmas magic and all those feelings of nostalgia, and you are worried about or have lost a pet, that's extra hard. As far as end of life discussions go, everybody hopes that their beloved pet is just gonna go to sleep and not wake up, and it'll be that simple. And a lot of times, unfortunately, it's not. You end up talking about trying to figure out, are they having more bad days than good days? There's one of the vet schools, I can send you the link to it. One of the vet schools actually has like a form that kind of guides you through trying to judge or rate your pet's quality of life to help with end of life decisions and discussions. Sometimes it just takes sort of taking a moment to reflect back on how was your pet at the prime of their life versus how are they now, and how profound is that difference to help you crystallize in your mind that it is time. And I think one of the things that I treasure about being a veterinarian is that I think that euthanasia is a gift. I think that it is amazing to be able to humanely end a pet's suffering instead of making them suffer until the inevitable conclusion of passing away. So, I try to talk people through each individual situation. It's a hard thing to decide sometimes unless the pet makes it very clear themselves with how they're acting or not acting. The other thing with pet loss in general is knowing that there actually are support groups on social media, talking to, if you have a therapist, talking to your friends that also love their pets, because pet loss can be one of those things that not everybody takes seriously. There's still a certain population of people that will scoff at the idea that somebody is genuinely grieving that their dog died, right? They're like, well, I mean, yeah, I get it. Your dog died, but it's just a dog. And it's like, no, this was somebody that this was an entity that I loved with all of my heart and was part of my everyday existence in a very fundamental way for however many years. And now they're gone. And that grief is valid and legitimate and real. And so, trying to just, if you find yourself in a situation where the people around you don't really give credit to that grief, maybe having awareness that is real and that there are people that completely understand, and then trying to seek out anybody in your circle that does understand for that empathy and help. Because I mean, it can be, when you lose a pet, it can be like you lost a family member. I mean, it can take a long time to process and work through.
Thank you for that. And thank you for sharing your experience overall. And I think our listeners are going to get a really good take on what it means to be a veterinarian, some of the issues that you kind of deal with and how to mitigate those. And then also with some, pristine pet knowledge and tips on how to navigate your pets as well.
Yeah, Dr. Reyff, we couldn't thank you enough. We always open up the floor if you want to throw out any social media handles that you might have.
Question.
Yeah. How can people reach you? Do you want to share how people can reach you, and/or if they're looking for a vet in the area, how do they reach out?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I work at City Vet in Flower Mound, Texas, and the phone number to that clinic is 972-355-2124. And then my email address is Karen, Karen .Reyff, Reyff, that's F as in feline, F as in feline, at cityvet.com. So, people can send me an email. And if you're looking for a vet, I'm happy to have you, and give us a call and schedule an appointment.
And I'll attest, Dr. Reyff is my personal vet, and so glad to have her in my corner. Totally.
Thank you. Thank you.
I love it. Well, thank you so much to both of you. One, Melissa, for recommending Dr. Reyff, and Dr. Reyff for joining us. I think it was just such a special episode. And as always, we hope that you hit all your boxes. Just remember that you just are special, important, and keep interrupting if that's what it takes to have your voice heard.